Hello, for today's presentation, we'll be examining who deserves to work, how women develop expectations of childcare support in Korea by Unseo Oh. Oh's article, Who Deserves to Work, examines how Korean mothers negotiate childcare support from their grandparents in order to maintain employment within the context of Korea's extremely competitive labor and job market, as well as rigid cultural and social norms surrounding motherhood. Using 100 in depth interviews with married mothers of varying economic classes, O explores the psychological and social processes that influence mothers' decisions to seek childcare assistance as a result of conflicts with work and child aid. O was able to identify two primary pathways among the mothers in her study. These include continuous and discontinuous work pathways. Mothers with continuous work histories remained in the workforce after childbirth, significantly relying on childcare provided by their grandparents. On the other hand, those with discontinuous work pathways often had difficulty remaining in the workforce around childbearing age, citing long working hours, low wages, or insufficient support systems as the reasons. This can be seen where she states Korea ranks lowest for gender equality, especially regarding the motherhood wage penalty and unequal division of labor at home. This study highlights that the notion of deservingness, shaped by a myriad of factors such as cultural ideologies, family expectations, and personal reflections on work, playing a crucial role in their decision to choose employment or taking care of their child. A central theme in the study is that the fact that mothers must justify their employment not only to themselves, but also to their families, especially grandparents or grandmothers, who are often the primary caregivers in situations where parental needs and occupation collide. In terms of methods, O study employs qualitative interviews with 100 mothers from diverse educational and occupational backgrounds in Seoul. Out of 10,000 respondents that met the criteria for the study, 60 participants were randomly selected and 50 were met up for an interview. Secondly, due to respondents on online surveys who may share certain characteristics or traits, 50 other participants were recruited through a restricted small sample from personal ties, allowing no more than 3 referrals from each tie. The average age was a mean of 35, ranging from 25 to 42. The average age at first birth was 30 years old, where roughly two-thirds had one child, and on average, the age of the youngest child was 2.5 years old. The OVA sample, which is an app for Korean corporations, included a larger sample of less educated mothers, while the Snowball sample had more elite educated mothers who graduated from top-ranked universities. Interviews lasted from 1 to 2 hours, where on average took about 90 minutes. All interviews were structured with roughly 40 open-ended questions, starting with questions about a typical day, continuing with work and family-related questions. Using Deduce, a software that is used for qualitative analysis, O used a two-stage coding analysis to determine which mothers had sought childcare support, as well as why and how they had decided to do so. Initially, O used open coding, the analytic process through which concepts or codes are attached to an observed data and phenomenon during qualitative data analysis, to organize the data into four major themes. These include work pathways and the rationale behind work decisions, childcare arrangement from birth to present, motivations to seek childcare support, and the process of negotiating and maintaining that support. When major patterns were observed, a second round of coding with a focused coding strategy was implemented. Later, O states important themes that emerged included the importance of educational accomplishments and the job stability and prestige, the meaning of being employed, and the stage of thinking about deservingness that strongly related to seeking and negotiating childcare. This analysis identifies recurring themes that are related to work decisions, childcare negotiations, and family dynamics that cause shifts in exploring childcare. The findings highlight how cultural norms and family relationships shape the process of seeking childcare support, emphasizing the importance of educational background, work prestige, and societal expectations in influencing these decisions. This is encapsulated with O's 20 quote, when she states, those who decided not to seek childcare support shared a framework of making the decision based on whether they considered the jobs worth keeping. This was a critical aspect because if a job was not good enough, mothers did not feel they deserved to ask for childcare help. Both the kind of work and the status of the job played an important role when evaluating a job is worth keeping. Further analysis reveals that before seeking help and throughout the process of asking for it, Korean women went through a myriad of emotional and mental processes as to find reasons to receive childcare. A major theme discovered can be seen where the grandparents of the person seeking help dissected and evaluated the meaning of the mother's occupation by asking if they truly deserve to work. While some mothers cited the high cost or distrust of formal daycare as a reason to seek kin-based childcare, many emphasized that the societal perceptions of their job's value played an even greater role in making their decisions. Mothers who had asked for childcare support spent a major portion of their time reflecting on their future career aspirations and talking with the grandmothers about working full time as a mother. The evaluation of the mother's work worthiness depended on factors such as occupational prestige, financial stability, and the symbolic importance of her job within the family. Mothers with higher level educational backgrounds, those who graduated from prestigious universities or work in higher level jobs, such as lawyers, frame their employment as a source of family pride and symbolic achievement. Therefore, those mothers often face smoother negotiations for their childcare assistance from their relatives, as their parents and in laws viewed their work as an extension of their family status and success. For example, one elite educated mother described how her father's high expectations of her professional achievements motivated her to remain employed and seek childcare support. Dahi, 27 years old, lead educated, states, "One of my main motivators to be a mother who works and to ask my mother for child help was my parents' expectations about my accomplishments." When asked about his reaction or her father's reaction to her quitting, she states, "My dad will be so disappointed, almost furious. I was a part of his dignity, his pride. Now he's retiring. All he talks about with his friends is where my husband and I work." They took their parents and parents in laws' high expectations as a sign of love and support, and thus tried to predict how their parents would think about their work decisions. Conversely, mothers with less prestigious educational or professional backgrounds, working as assistants or secretaries, often encountered more challenges in justifying their work, relying on arguments related to financial stability. The negotiation process frequently involves mothers assessing whether their jobs are worthy of sacrificing family members' time and resources. For example, Jong Yun, 32 years old, who's elite educated, recalled how it was by stating that it was hard to expect support from her grandparents because her mother had consistently told her that her job was too ordinary to keep after becoming a mother. On the other hand, women who were not sure about their work pathways also found out, either directly or indirectly, that their parents or parents in law saw no value in their jobs after motherhood. The accumulation of such comments was sufficiently discouraging that they did not plan to stay in the workforce. These mothers emphasized the economic benefits of their jobs, particularly if their positions offered a long term security or opportunities for promotion in the future, which could influence their perceptions toward aiding their kin.
I will now be going into detail about the primary argument. In the article, O argues that the concept of deservingness ultimately determines if South Korean mothers will seek help with childcare and thus continue to have careers. It is important to explain what is meant by deservingness. Women in the sample believed they deserved childcare support if their job was valuable enough to maintain while being a mother. Some of the factors that contributed to the assessment of their job's worth included daily responsibilities, prestige, and opportunities for advancement. In one case, a 34-year-old mother named Haru worked as a secretary at different firms for several years. She ultimately quit her job and considered it to be unworthy due to the lack of professional development being offered and the simple nature of the day-to-day tasks. This type of employment was not offering enough benefits to sacrifice the time spent at home raising children, as other members of society can easily develop the necessary skills to perform the job. In another example, a 36-year-old mother named Shine believed that women with more prestigious jobs, such as lawyers or doctors, deserve to ask for childcare support. In her case, she worked for an unpopular corporation and did not think her job was worthy enough to go through the process of convincing grandmothers to help with childcare. Family members are more accepting of a working mother when the job is highly respected in society and sets them apart from the generic crowd. Receiving the qualifications to practice in a highly praised field like medicine is a challenging process that not everyone has the discipline or intelligence to be able to accomplish. A small population of individuals can reach that status, and all those years of hard work should not be wasted once becoming a mother. Despite the fact that all forms of employment generate an income, which can supplement the amount already being provided by the fathers, mothers cannot easily abandon their duty of staying at home and looking after their children. In South Korea, mothers are traditionally the primary ones responsible for all things relating to childcare, and there's a stigma against maternal employment. In an article written by Cha and Kim, 2023, the authors discuss how South Korean mothers are held to a standard where their life should be completely dedicated to satisfying their children's needs and giving precedence to them above everything else. In contrast, a father's responsibility is to be the breadwinner, and they feel more compelled to succeed within their position at work. Due to deeply ingrained gender norms, fathers would not have to evaluate their deservingness to continue working or develop a list of reasons that make their employment valuable. Fathers are expected to work as society has an image of mothers staying at home to be with their children. Leaving traditions behind for a job that is not culturally accepted or deemed as worthy can evoke a lot of shame and disapproval for Korean mothers. Thus, simply wanting to have a job for a source of income is not a valid reason, and exceptions can only be made for women that have proved the merit of their work. Among the mothers that chose to continue working, considerable energy went towards having conversations with grandmothers and contemplating about the trajectory of their careers. They do not feel that as mothers they are warranted to receive help with their children by default and therefore could only justify it if their jobs are exceptional. At the end of the day, they have to place the burden on grandmothers who oftentimes are older adults, which is already an uncomfortable favor to ask. It is important to note that convincing grandmothers to help with childcare support varied considerably depending on the mother's educational attainment, a major factor that contributes to deservingness. For women that were classified as elite educated mothers, that is, graduates from top ranked universities, they received significant support from their parents to continue working, and it was not a difficult process. In the sample, a woman named Dahi had expressed that her father would be upset if she left her career behind to stay at home. The status of a job is important to the mothers, but also for their parents who feel a sense of achievement. A feeling of joy is invoked in the entire family when a mother with outstanding accomplishments remains employed. However, the process of obtaining childcare support is much more difficult for the mothers that did not have a degree at all or graduated from institutions that are less prestigious. The women belonging to these groups experienced more trials when proving their deservingness, as simply having a degree is not a marker of success. The ability to attend a highly ranked institution with a more competitive admission process makes one appear more distinguished and increases their status in society. They were ultimately able to convince the grandmothers by explaining the potential for promotions in the workplace and contributing to the family's long-term financial security. It is evident that the notion of deservingness is not only shaped by mothers' opinions, but also of other family members, especially the grandmother who would ultimately take the responsibility of childcare. Due to the immense pressure they have to fulfill their traditional gender role, Korean mothers cannot make a decision that would challenge societal norms without giving significant justification as to why it is necessary. The reality is that women are not valued in the workforce as much as they are as mothers who stay at home to nurture their children. Therefore, it is necessary to demonstrate to their families that they are entitled to the privileges of kin-based childcare support, and having established careers as mothers is valuable.
In this section, I intend to explain why South Korean daycares are stigmatized. There will be a reference to UNCLO's paper and what they think contributes to the stigma. Next, there will be a discussion of South Korea's globalization on daycares. UNCLO's paper, Who Deserves to Work, identifies that working mothers in Korea heavily rely on childcare to continue working, yet mothers seem to consistently rely on their families for support. O also describes the widely shared distrust of formal daycare centers in Korea. This is why the question of why aren't South Korean mothers using daycares is posed. O points out that the common assumption of why daycare isn't being used is due to affordability and culture, but instead, this can be explained by the deteriorating quality of daycares and laws that fail to create daycares that are desirable. O's paper interviews multiple working mothers. I use these responses to understand the stigma towards daycares. Also, at times, using a grandmother for child support seems problematic, yet mothers continue to insist that their grandmothers help in child rearing. This leads us to discuss globalization of education. After Kim Young Sam established a civil government after years of military dictatorship in South Korea, globalization became the country's strategy for economic growth. Globalization meant an increase in market efficiencies, freedom of markets, and the deregulation of markets. Along with the globalization movement in 1995, welfare was combined with neoliberal goals to form productive welfare. Welfare would be used to help people stay employed and would enable private businesses to deliver social welfare to the public. At this time, The beneficiaries of welfare decreased from 5.5% of the population in 1992 to 3.3% in 2006. This greatly changed South Korea's daycare system. In an attempt to enable working mothers to stay employed, the government tried to increase the affordability and accessibility of daycares. They also intended for daycare services to be delivered by private businesses. In 2007, there was a massive surge in the number of private daycares in South Korea. This was caused by the government's three major changes in the daycare system. The first one was price ceilings on fees, which were created in both private and public daycares to reduce the cost parents have to pay for childcare. The second one, regulations were loosened. Previously, private daycares needed approval and a permit from the government before they opened a daycare. Now all they needed was simply to report that they were opening a daycare. Also, there used to be a required ratio of teachers to students for a daycare to be certified, but they removed this requirement. Third, standards for teachers in daycares were lowered to increase the number of teachers working in daycares. Sadly, this overall lowered the quality of daycares, but we will discuss that soon. First, we must delve deeper into how standards for teachers were lowered. Usually, teachers had 3 tiers of licenses they could acquire to become a teacher. Rank 1 meant that you had some form of degree in child education. The second rank meant that a high school diploma plus formal training was required. The third rank meant that you earned a certificate to teach. The government changed the requirements of the third rank by making the standards for teachers to become certified much easier. The third rank certificate program took only 1 year to complete, which allowed people with only a high school diploma to quickly become professional teachers. The major oversupply of teachers drove down teacher wages, which allowed private daycares to cut costs. As well as that, this led to a mass production of underqualified teachers that would provide inadequate education to children. Back to the topic of lowered quality, private businesses prioritize profits over welfare, which drives them to cut costs to make a profit. Private daycares cannot make parents pay lower fees for daycares since the government put a cap on it. This leaves 2 avenues for cost cutting: lower expenses on teachers, food, and health, or receive government subsidies. The government barred private businesses from receiving subsidies, so now there is only the option of lowering expenses. At this time, the daycares became extremely accessible and were very cheap. The cost of daycares took up only 6% of the average urban worker's household income in 2008. Although the government achieved their ideal accessibility goals, immediate issues arose in private daycares. Many daycares did not follow the required laws. Kitchen health procedures weren't followed, which ended up giving many children food poisoning. Medical examinations were not provided, and teachers weren't given training. Since parents became afraid of using these daycares, the government under Roh Moo-hyun decided to try and fix the flawed daycare system. However, their attempts failed due to the deeply rooted issues that required further research and new solutions to repair it. The government wanted to remove the price ceiling, but this would end up transitioning the cost of daycares onto parents, which would reduce accessibility. The government tried to build more public daycares, but the financial burden was too great for local governments to handle. The government also attempted to provide incentives to private daycares with subsidies for complying with certain quality requirements, such as using 20% of the funds to increase the wages of teachers. This, of course, led to fraudulent reports on where the money was spent, and most private daycare owners pocketed the money and didn't use it for what they said that they used it for. This is overall caused by a major failure to monitor daycares. In Seoul, only 170 officers supervised 4,700 private daycares. As you can see, they're heavily overwhelmed. To conclude this section, neoliberalism in South Korea majorly changed the welfare landscape and the quality of daycares. Affordability greatly rose, but the quality was too low for people to use it. Although this is understood to be a major problem, there is no simple solution. I would now like to present our discussion questions. In South Korea, what role do other family members play in determining a mother's deservingness for childcare support? How do these norms and cultural biases impact women's lives on a large scale over time, other than jobs? Finally, in South Korea, working mothers viewed their deservingness to work based on cultural and structural factors. Why and how does social class heavily influence a mother's decision to work?